Hi, I'm Greg Hunter, and this is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, December 27th, 2013. It's the last wrap-up of the year. My top story, actually, are a bunch of stories, and they all come out of the Middle East. Let's start with Iran. The Iranian parliament, the lawmakers there, are considering a bill that will allow 60% enrichment of uranium. Actually, it'll require up to 60% enrichment of uranium. And the one thought there to me is deal breaker. Remember this deal that the West, the U.S., and then also China, Russia, France, Germany, the U.K. Cut in Geneva to try to curtail Iran's nuclear program. If they go to 60% enrichment of uranium, that's a deal breaker, a cold deal breaker. Now, there's lots of people in the U.S., especially in the Senate, that want to, put new sanctions on Iran. So far, that's been stopped by Harry Reid. But, boy, I don't see there's any way of stopping that. If they pass a bill that requires them to enrich uranium to 60%. Now, the Iranians have always said that their nuclear program is their right, and they say it's for the peaceful production of energy. Lots of countries in the West don't buy it. They think it's so Iran can produce nuclear weapons. We shall see how that story unfolds. That is a giant story for 2014. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia, these guys aren't keen on any Iranian nuclear program. They have said in the past, as I said, reported in the last week or so, that they are willing to go it alone against Syria and Iran. Syria and Iran are allies in Syria. Listen, if Saudi Arabia decides to go it alone, that's going to be extremely dollar negative. I don't see how the whole world doesn't jump in if, Saudi Arabia attacks Iran, or Iran attacks Saudi Arabia, or Iran, attacks Israel, or Israel with Saudi Arabia attacks. That's a mess. That's a colossal mess. I've told you that in the past, and that's a real hot spot in the world. Saudi Arabia and their stance towards Iran and Syria. And listen, I think if they do attack Iran and we don't help them, the U.S., extremely dollar negative. There's going to be no more petrodollar. Saudi Arabia trades oil almost exclusively in dollars. And, hey, yuan petrodollar, here we come. That's a very, very important story in the Middle East. The Syrian civil war raging on. It so far claimed the lives of more than 120,000 Syrians. A new wrinkle there. The Syrian government is now dropping barrel bombs on the al-Qaeda-backed rebels, and so there is no end in sight in that conflict whatsoever. There's also, problems spilling over into countries around Syria. Turkey is having its own problems and a crisis in the government there. People are asking the prime minister there to step down. Its currency has tanked. There's another, huge problem. The other thing that came out of Syria is that the Syrian government, the Assad regime, has just inked a deal with the Russian oil and gas companies to drill for oil off the coast of Syria. My question is, why hasn't this been developed earlier? And boy, isn't that going to stiffen the Russian resolve to back the Syrians if they have a gas and oil deal that they're going to be able to drill for gas and oil off the coast of Syria. I think that just mucks up the waters and makes war an even greater possibility if tensions escalate there. The UN is asking the U.S. to explain itself and justify, a drone strike on a caravan of cars heading to a wedding in Yemen. 15 people were killed. The UN is outraged. The U.S. apparently thought it was a caravan of al-Qaeda members, and it was a group of civilians going to a wedding. I wish the UN wants the U.S. to explain itself. I wish somebody would ask just here over in the U.S. press corps, hey, how is it that, we're killing al-Qaeda in places like Yemen, yet we're arming them in places like Libya and Syria? Could you please explain the bad al-Qaeda and the good al-Qaeda? What does the bad and the good look like? There's also charges in Syria that the al-Qaeda-backed rebels are also being accused of atrocities and crimes. It's just a mess over there. And let's just go ahead and move down to Egypt. And Egypt, the Egyptian government that was took out the Morsi regime, the Muslim Brotherhood, with a military coup, has now outlawed the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Egyptian government in power now says the Muslim Brotherhood is a terror organization. Well, now they can prosecute the Muslim Brotherhood. And, of course, I don't know if that's right or wrong, but, that's going to add to the tensions in Egypt. I mean, you're going to see an outright revolt and civil war in Egypt, and this all adds to a picture in and around the Middle East. And, I want to bring up one more thing. South Sudan, lots of fighting in South Sudan. U.S. military forces were shot at as they were evacuating some U.S. citizens. Other citizens of other countries are there. The fighting is nowhere near stopped. And Sudan also is rich in oil reserves. So if you add all this together, all the countries around the Middle East with ongoing and possible conflicts that could erupt, I don't see how we get out of 2014 without at least a regional war and maybe even a world war, and it will center around the Middle East. I hope I'm wrong. The Federal Reserve, I mean, this was what I saw on the USA Today, and, they're, ballyhooing the 100 years of making history, 100 years of mismanaging the economy and blowing bubbles and picking winners and rewarding their friends is what that should be. Yes, they did have a little critical analysis of the Federal Reserve in the USA Today newspaper, but, lots of folks, including myself, want to see the Federal Reserve abolished. I mean, you can't audit them. If they're so proud of what they're doing, then let's see an audit. I mean, in the audit that came after the financial crash, it was $16 trillion. Other people mark the amount of money printing that the Federal Reserve has done to, around $30 trillion or $38 trillion or $40 trillion. I mean, it's trillions of dollars. And who do they pick as a winner? And who do they pick as a loser? The Federal Reserve came out last week and talked about their, tapering, but then they called it not a taper. We had Rob Kirby on this week of Kirby Analytics saying that, well, they may or may not be tapering, but what they are doing is putting, trillions of dollars, more than 10 trillion, actually about 12 trillion in the last 6 months of interest rate swaps to hold interest rates down. Hey, lo and behold, the 10-year still has been inching up. Are they going to be able to tamp that down? Are they going to keep it from going up? The U.S. government cannot afford paying high interest rates, much higher interest rates than the massive amount of debt it has. The housing market would certainly, crumble. The retail market would crumble. And the Federal Reserve said that, left it open, that they were tapering, but they're trying to put a high level of accommodation in the market, and they, could untaper. They could increase it. Well, hey, guess what happened to Christmas sales? Foot traffic in stores was down, something like 21%. I'm sure online shopping made up for some of that, but you'll see in the future here the Christmas sales aren't going to be good. Sales in other countries, in Europe, for example, aren't very good as well. For example, in Italy, Christmas shopping was down 11%. I think that's a trend worldwide. The global economy is going down, spiraling down, and that's with a massive amount of money printing globally. Almost every country on the planet is printing money like crazy to try to prop up their ailing economies. China is printing tons of money to try to keep its real estate market from imploding. Japan is printing massive amounts of money. They're actually seeking inflation. The European Union doesn't print as much as the U.S., but they're still, floating their markets over there. And so the global economy is not going to do well in 2014. I say look for a major turnaround in Fed policy in 2014. I think they'll be forced to, pour the coal to the fire and print tons of money, more than the 75 that they say they're printing now, more than the 85 they were printing before they tapered it. And I think they could go to 95, 100, 110. One of the guests this year was a bomb that was dropped. Fabian Calvo of the NoteHouse.us said his sources said the real Fed money printing was about 125 billion per month. And we still have an economy in the U.S. that's tail spinning. Housing is off in the latest month. Now, I had a big month the month before that, but still, it's off. Unemployment, they keep touting these unemployment numbers, but yet they never say much about the labor participation rate, which is the real reason why unemployment numbers are coming down. Less people are being counted. More people are leaving the workforce. You watch 2014, the Fed will have a stunning turnaround in money printing, and it's going to be overt. They're going to want people to know that they're coming to the rescue. And there's another thing that the Federal Reserve is going to have to come to the rescue. And Obamacare the fees for Obamacare are unbelievable. I mean, most people are paying more and getting less. And here, even the mainstream media is coming out with stories here. It's sticker shock. This is an AP story in the mainstream media, and I've been harping on this for a while, that you can't insure an additional 40 million people for free. The people that can pay and will pay more. The people that cannot or will not pay, they're going to have to be subsidized. I mean, this social nirvana that Obama and the Democrats want to have is going to kill the economy for everybody. Nobody's going to get anything if our currency crashes, if our bond market crashes. I mean, crashes. And here's a new buzzword to look out for in 2014. I've been hearing more and more of this income inequality. They're going to have a vote in the Senate, and of course they're not going to increase, or the House, and they're not going to increase, or both, and they're not going to increase, payments to people who are unemployed. They've curtailed that benefit. They're going to say, well, that's just terrible that we're not doing that, even though we can't afford to do much of anything. We need to be cutting massive amounts of spending. But the Democrats are going to bring that up. They're going to bring up income inequality. Remember that, income inequality. That, everybody needs to have a certain level of income. Really, that's communism. They like to call themselves progressive, and I know I'm getting kind of partisan here, but I'm not partisan. But the Republicans aren't communists. And we know how that worked out with Stalin and Mao and the other communist regimes that were brutal. Income inequality. Because I'll tell you, they're going to have to come up with a new issue in 2014, because Obamacare is going to suck the life and an extra income from people out of the economy. The economy will be tail spinning by November of 2014. Another prediction, 2014, Democrats will lose the Senate. Now listen, I'm not a big Republican, but at least they didn't vote for Obamacare. And if you think that I am being, Pollyannish, or I'm being a doom and gloomer on the this crash, and it hasn't happened yet. Well, former UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown, remember him? Well, he was out not this last week, but the week before, with an op-ed piece in the New York Times, and it was titled "Stumbling Towards a Crash." Now, in order for somebody that is connected as Gordon Brown, whether you like him or not, he sold, the half of UK's gold at the bottom, Brownie's bottom, Brown's bottom. Whether you agree with him or not, he is warning of a crash. And how bad and how commonplace is that perception among people in his circles? That, well, we're having a crash, go ahead and write an op-ed piece about it. But if you watch the mainstream media, you would think, wow, the economy's doing great. Look at these unemployment. Look at these. Inflation is low. Please. The economy, with massive amounts of global money printing, is spiraling down. Obamacare certainly will help push its head under the water. There's another top financial Wall Street advisor, and he's out telling some of his clients to get a bug out bad. You need food, water, and a gun and ammunition. This is a top Wall Street financial advisor. Warning of calamity so bad, you're going to need to have your own food, and you're going to need to have a gun. That's how bad it is, and how bad it could be. What I like to tell people is this is a math problem. And if you keep adding the math up, it keeps coming out with a terrible outcome, especially for people who are asleep, who are in denial, and who do not see what's coming. Thank you for supporting USA Watchdog with your comments and donations. Donations help us out. Thank you very much. I'm Greg Hunter. That's the way I see it.